beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
It has gone exactly 4 p.m. Central African time. Oh, what a beautiful way to end off the upside with the absolutely fabulous Lyra and Believer. She leads us directly into the news at 4 p.m. Welcome to it. This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa. Let's catch up on the latest local, continental and international news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories: the Sawa concerns over voter apathy in South Africa and Israel to take control of southern Lebanon. Good afternoon. I'm Jonani Tulo Webe. Nearly half of eligible South African voters are not registered ahead of this year's local government elections. This emerges from the Human Sciences Research Council's voter participation survey. The findings highlight growing disengagement from electoral politics across the country. HSRC Research Director in Development, Capable and Ethical State, Dr. Ben Roberts, says many citizens feel unheard and disconnected from political leaders, raising concerns about participation levels at the polls.
There's a concern from the public that politicians are undermining democracy. There's a very large gap between the importance attached to politicians listening to citizens and evaluation of politicians' ability to do this. There's also a sense that that people amongst the public, they're not being sufficiently heard and their needs responded to.
2 Russians accused of stirring up anti-government protests, conducting a campaign of disinformation and attempting to interfere in next year's presidential election are due to go on trial in Angola. Political consultant Igor Rachtin and translator Lev Lakhshtanov, who were arrested last year, are facing 11 charges, including terrorism, espionage and influence peddling. The indictment includes charges relating to an alleged operation aimed at changing the political discourse of Angola. The Russians' lawyers are challenging the indictment on the grounds that it lacks concrete and objective facts. There are reports of heavy fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces in Blue Nile State near the Ethiopian border. The RSF and the allied factions are trying to seize the strategic town of Kurmuk. The BBC's Richard Cargo has more.
The latest clashes mark an escalation in the conflict as the paramilitary rapid support forces attempt to advance farther north by capturing the strategic town. Armed fighters are reported to be advancing across rugged terrain in what appears to be combat vehicles, while unverified images online show some fighters on foot brandishing weapons. An unnamed Sudanese official has accused Ethiopia of backing RSF forces in the region. The two groups have intermittently traded control of the town of Jerut, south of Kurmuk, over the past week. Ethiopia has ordered its citizens to leave that sector of the border.
South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says there has been a steady decline in the number of people contracting TB annually compared to the 2015 baseline. He was speaking during the National World TB Day commemoration event at Caledon in the Overberg district of the Western Cape province. Mashatile says the national TB program has managed to achieve a reduction of TB incidence rate by 61% of new TB cases by 2024. The Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz says his military will take control of southern Lebanon up to the Litani River until the threat from Hezbollah is removed. It's the first direct acknowledgement of Israeli plans to occupy around a tenth of Lebanese territory. Katz spoke during a visit to a military command center in Israel.
Hundreds of thousands of residents of southern Lebanon who evacuated northward will not return south of the Litani River until security for the residents of northern Israel is guaranteed. All 5 bridges over the Litani that Hezbollah used to transport terrorists and weapons have been blown up, and the IDF will control the remaining routes in the security zone up to the Litani.
Recapping the top story this hour, nearly half of eligible South African voters are not registered ahead of this year's local government elections. This emerges from the Human Sciences Research Council's voter participation survey. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, the 2026 Miami Open winners will pocket an increased prize money. And Victor Osimhen is hoping to buy Istanbulspor football team. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Business, trade, and investment opportunities that put the continent first. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni.
It is a very good afternoon to you, Senegal. Good afternoon to you, Democratic Republic of Congo. Good afternoon, Kenya. Eritrea. Good afternoon, Eswatini. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. It's gone exactly 5 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time on this Tuesday, the 24th of March. Here's what we've got in store for you this hour. Kenya Airways sees an increase in demand for seats due to the effects of war in the Middle East. And SMEs and startups are urged to brace themselves for heightened volatility and rising costs in the coming months due to the escalating tensions involving Iran. Do stay connected to Africa and indeed the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch or listen anytime, anywhere at www.channelafrica.co.za, on the Channel Africa mobile app and on SABC Plus or via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. You can also catch us on social media at Channel Africa on Facebook and Channel Africa One on all other platforms. Channel Africa, first with the African story, globally.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. We begin here this afternoon. The residents of Lagos, Nigeria's commercial hub, are facing mounting pressure as fuel prices continue to surge, driven by ongoing tensions in the Middle East that are disrupting global oil supply and raising the cost of living. At filling stations across the city, petrol prices have climbed above 1,000 naira per litre on Monday, following another increase late last week. Many Nigerians fear that the hike will put further strain on household budgets and daily commuting costs. Channel Africa's economics reporter, Innocent Samosa, has more.
The recent fuel price hike comes as global oil prices soar, with shipments disrupted along key routes such as the Strait of Hormuz. Even as an oil-producing nation, Nigeria depends largely on imported refined fuel, making it vulnerable to international price fluctuations. Senior international trade consultant Collins Nekwe says Nigeria's challenge is not a resource problem, but a structural contradiction.
When global disruptions occur, like tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, Nigeria is hit immediately because it is exposed to global refined fuel markets, not just crude oil markets. Let me put that in perspective. Nigeria consumes roughly 50 to 60 million liters of petrol on a daily basis. But domestic refining has historically lagged behind demand, creating a persistent supply gap. This creates three layers of vulnerability. First, import dependence means global price shocks are directly imported into the Nigerian economy.
But how long are these elevated fuel prices likely to persist, and what ripple effects should we expect on inflation?
The duration of elevated fuel prices depends largely on geopolitics, but current indicators suggest this is not a short-lived shock.
Dr. Adeniyi Efetayo paints a picture of the situation on the ground.
The challenges is just the increase in the pump price. You understand, it started from 800 and something naira to 900, 960. Now it's selling for about 1,380 naira or so. And because of that, is biting hard on Nigerians who move from point A to point B. You've had your plan yourself out, and you get to the garage or motor park, and they told you that the transportation fare has been increased.
Citizens on the ground say the price hike is a push towards switching to electric vehicles.
We have not been finding this easy. They increased it to over 1,000 naira. This is the right time for, if we can fully switch to electric vehicle, electric cars, electric bike, it will help us a lot.
The price of fuel now is too high. I would say we are low than them, we are suffering for it. If I will get electric car, I will prepare it more than the fuel.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Franschhoek, get ready. The vibe is happening this March. The Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek is bringing more than 30 local and international acts for one unforgettable weekend, including DJ Zinke, DJ Kent, DJ Kent Zero, Layla Hathaway, Robert Glasper, and Bilal, plus many more. From 27 to 29 March 2026, experience the music, the culture, and the energy. Grab your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek. Feel the energy. Live the moment.
60 years of Channel Africa. Your trusted voice. Your African perspective. Into the future. Big conversations about Africa's climate future are coming to Johannesburg.
Africa's future is on the agenda. Don't miss your place in the conversation.
Channel Africa, in partnership with Wits Business School, presents Africa Matters. Climate change. Financing Africa's recovery on the 25th of March. Join us live.
We are excited to be broadcasting live this Wednesday at the Africa Matters Summit.
Do join us there. It's going to be a very wonderful gathering of Africans.
Broadcasting directly from Wits Business School. Real conversations. Real solutions.
So join the conversation.
Africa Matters.
Be part of the conversation.
Only on Channel Africa. For 60 years, Channel Africa has connected the continent. Celebrate the journey. Celebrate the African perspective.
It is 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we move our focus from Nigeria to Kenya, where Kenya Airways says there is an increase in demand for seats on its flights. And this is due, they say, to the effects of war in the Middle East, with most of the traffic coming from Europe, the United States, as well as Asia. The airline says demand for seats on its flights, known as load factor, was now almost at 100% from around 70% in January. It also indicated that it has about 56 days of jet fuel supply and is making efforts to obtain more from India. The US-Israeli war on Iran has created chaos in the global aviation industry, prompting some airlines to raise their fares and change their schedules to reduce stops at airports in the Middle East or to cancel flights altogether. For more on this, we joined on the line by aviation analyst Phuthego Mojapele. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Thami, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Phuthego. Now, to what extent has the closure or, let's say, the disruption of Middle Eastern airspace reshaped the global flight routes?
Look, this conflict has really hampered with the economy, particularly around the Middle East airlines, which has been the mega of the aviation hubs. So you would realize that the hub of the world connect through these Middle East hubs, Dubai as well as Doha, and all those hubs now are basically stand still. There is nothing much happening there due to this war. Now, what other airlines, particularly around Kenya Airways, which is a member of the Sky team, partnering with other airlines, Air France, KLM, and Korean Air, all those airlines, they are now utilizing Kenya Airways to navigate around the parts that are that are not that close from the Middle East. So people chooses Kenya instead of going to Middle East, which is more slightly better than having to go to Middle East because they're able to also cross into Europe and the United States, even though they are not really operating extensively in the United States. They only have one flight, but they are significant player in part of the East Africa, which is not far out of the Middle East. So people would choose to use that to break the trip in between, utilizing that, as well as and also Ethiopian Airline also is one of those that have seen a major increase on demand, and you would realize that the prices also have increased due to the demand that is now in high demand. People are looking to travel because your main airlines are not operating.
Kenya Airlines says that its load factor is now almost at 100%, and it's moved to that level from around 70%. But does the airline have the capacity to handle this demand?
They do not, and I'll tell you why I'm saying they do not. So Kenya Airways have seen a major shakeup in the executive, in also they've been trying to reshape their fortunes and trying to get to streamline their business to suit what they can afford to deliver. And you would realize also that recently they have just signed an agreement working with the Air, which is another airline that we have in South Africa. So that cement their existence, and they also have a partnership with South African Airways, which I believe it was strategic. So in that case, you're looking at them relying in terms of capacity, like you were asking, relying on this partnership that they have been signing to try and advance their fortunes more on these partners that they've got in South African Airways, Air, and many other airlines that they have signed agreement with. One of the things that they have said it categorically is that they are not willing to work with the Ethiopian airline, which obviously have dominated most of the African continent. You would know that we've seen just on Sunday the first service of the newly formed airline from the DRC, Congo Air, is now run by Ethiopian Airline. So that also tells you that there is a huge hunger of the aviation in South Africa, particularly in Africa, at the moment.
So there's Kenya Airlines Airways that we're focusing in on now. You've also mentioned Ethiopian Airlines also benefiting from this war in the Middle East. Congo Air as well coming up. Are there any other airlines that you think would benefit from the status quo?
At this stage, the airlines that would be more on the eastern part of Africa would be the ones that are going to benefit more. And also with us here in South Africa, even though we don't have a large scale of international play, we're not playing largely in international, but the small scale that we are playing would contribute, particularly around from Kenya to South Africa, from Mombasa, from Zanzibar and other places where our local airlines are operating. They would tap into that because more passengers that could easily use Emirates, Qatar, now they want to get somewhere. They want to come to South Africa and connect from Johannesburg to go somewhere else. They want to go if they find themselves in other areas where there is no operation in other airlines like your Emirates and Middle East Airlines. They would definitely benefit because they would then get those passengers from wherever they are to South Africa, and then from there they can connect somewhere. So South Africa is benefiting, even though it's not an international player that much, but it does benefit a lot into this because one of the reasons that I think also is important is that the costs of operating around our country, we know the services here, they are really efficient. We do have one of the best airports in the world. And more airlines, they like flying to South Africa, particularly around Cape Town and Johannesburg. So that also makes things much easier for people to want to come to South Africa to connect here, should they not get what they wanted in the Middle East Airlines.
I'd like to also, before our time ends, Phuthego, focus on the issue of jet fuel. We see Kenya saying that the jet fuel prices are still soaring. They have indicated that they've got about 56 days of jet fuel supply left. Does the surge in demand for seats actually improve profitability for the airline, given the jet fuel situation and supply?
Well, they're burning more and then they're buying expensive. That's something that needs to be understood. So the more you carry, the more you are going to burn, the more you would need more fuel, because then you burn more because you are carrying more and you are paying more. So it does not necessarily translate into fortunes, but it increases, it keeps you afloat, but it doesn't give you more fortunes. You are more challenged on if you carry more weight, you need more fuel to burn because you are obviously heavy, and you are paying more for fuel because the prices that have been increased through these wars have impacted into globally. That is why they have moved into India to try and get fuel in India. But that also is a temporary measure. It's not going to sustain them any longer, unlike where you are certain that you are going to get the number and you can predict your fortune beyond 3 months. In that way, you'll be able to plan. And we don't know how long this war is going to take. But at this stage, we are also going to be heavily affected in South Africa.
Phuthego Mojapele, great talking to you once again, and a great point there that you're making as far as the profitability of the airlines. Yes, increased number of seats, but also the costs have increased. The input costs have also increased, so that burns out whatever profit one would have made from an enhanced loading. The load factor now at almost 100%, but with the price of jet fuel also escalating, a lot of that profit gets burnt there in Phuthego Mojapele. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's aviation analyst Phuthego Mojapele taking us to 23 minutes after 4.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
So leaders of the East African community have set a June 30th, 2026 deadline in order to eliminate all remaining non-tariff barriers. This follows a resolution adopted at the 25th Ordinary EAC Summit held on the 7th of March in Arusha, Tanzania. These barriers, ranging from bureaucratic delays and inconsistent standards to restrictive licensing requirements, have long increased the cost as well as the complexity of doing business across the region. The Kenya-Uganda dairy tensions are a glaring example of how trade flow disruptions. Earlier, I spoke to the founder and the chairperson of AMS Capital Associates, or AIMS Capital Associates, Aloy Mutambingwa, about the new deadline that has been set to eliminate all remaining non-tariff barriers in the East African community.
One of the challenging areas during my tenure of office was to deal with non-tariff barriers, removing the non-tariff barriers and effectively implementing the Common Market Protocol. That was 2009 to 2011. We are now counting over 13 years down the line, still having issues around non-tariff barriers. Between 2023 and today, the reported non-tariff barriers have remained persistent, not removed, by the percentage of between 43% and 50%. This figure is very alarming, especially for a region that is supposed by today to have fully integrated, especially the market around movement of goods, persons, the right of residence, and the right of establishment for businesses. So basically, it is a concern shared by the Summit of Heads of States in its previous sitting, and it provided this deadline of June 2026 to have those reported, those non-tariff barriers reported, fully removed. But of course, the mechanisms for ensuring effective removal, I'm not sure whether they are already in place. And therefore pessimistic about the deadline, because the issue is not about when to remove them. It's about how to make sure they are not there for all the time.
So, Mr. Mutambingwa, with that in mind, and your pessimism around the meeting of this deadline, what have been the biggest obstacles in previous attempts trying to eliminate the non-tariff barriers?
First, let me mention what are those non-tariff barriers. You'll find, for example, customs procedures. In some borders, customs become a very lengthy, disturbing process. That is also qualified as a non-tariff barriers to trade, frustrating the entry and the management of goods going through customs across the borders of these countries. Another type of a non-tariff barrier is the standards that are not yet harmonized. The sanitary and phytosanitary standards, the axle load on the road transport, these are standards that ought to have been harmonized from 2010 when the Common Market Protocol was passed. And the third is the administrative bottlenecks, the barriers, the roadblocks here and there. And these are very difficult to manage, especially where they keep moving. So they are a moving target. This is one type of a non-tariff barrier that remains a moving target. Now, talking of an administrative barrier, it also includes closing border posts. As we are talking now, the border between Rwanda and Burundi is closed. I think other borders between Burundi and Congo equally closed because of the insecurity on one hand, but it is sabotage on another hand. The border between Rwanda and Burundi ought to be open by now, but it's closed. They're both, all borders that are linking Rwanda and Burundi. When you look at Kenya and Uganda, you find the major bottleneck in terms of non-tariff barrier is the use of standards to actually curtail the movement of goods, the sanitary and phytosanitary standards. And this is to do with the importation and exportation of milk between Uganda and Kenya. So these are some of the examples I can provide you, as cases in point, showing how complicated and challenging the removal of these non-tariff barriers can be. Therefore, not seeing June as being a realistic time for declaring at least 80 or 90% removal of these non-tariff barriers.
That was the founder and chairperson of Ames Capital Associates, Mr. Alois Mutabingwa. He takes us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African Time as we head over now to the markets desk, where Nosipho Zuma is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon. In your business news, the SAWA, $1 is trading at 16 Rand 97 in South Africa. In Botswana, is trading at 13 Pula 51. In Namibia, it is trading at 16 Namibian dollars 97. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 19 kwacha 49 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 157 bir 01. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 759. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 855. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 366. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 52 Egyptian pound 17. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 92. In Algeria, it is trading at 131 dinar 27. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 9 dirham 36. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,250 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,360 and platinum at $1,879 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $103.44 a barrel. Now, for any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, here is Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon, Thami. We bet off with cricket news. Cricket South Africa. CSA is pleased to announce a partnership with Algoa Holdings, exclusive distributors of science in sports products in South Africa. SIS products enhance national nutritional performance and recovery support. The collaboration will enable CSA to extend consistent and reliable sports nutrition across the entire high-performance pathway from the national teams to the under-19s. CSA joins over 150 professional football, cycling and rugby clubs around the world, including Great Britain Athletics, Saracens Rugby Club and Tottenham Hotspur, in preferring SIS as a sports nutrition partner in fostering the elite performance. The partnership aims to strengthen CSA's commitment to providing world-class scientifically grounded support to its cricketers, ensuring that teams are backed by safe and effective performance nutrition. Now, tennis news. The 2026 Miami Open offers a total prize purse of over $9.4 million for both the ATP and the WTA tournaments, with singles champions taking home $1,151 million and earning 1,000 ranking points. Finalists earn $612,000, while semifinalists receive $340,000. The singles champion will earn $1.1 million. The doubles team that wins will split $468,000. The prize money for the 2026 singles champion represents an increase from $1.124 million awarded in 2025. Now, football news. The Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, has approved amendments to its statutes and electoral framework fixing on the 2026 on the 26th of September for its elective Congress. The decision was taken at an extraordinary General Assembly held at the DSP Al-Maizega Bakay Hall, Government House, Yanagwa, Bayelsa State. Congress unanimously endorsed revisions to the NFF statutes, electoral code, and standing orders. March 2026 edition aimed at strengthening governance and transparency. It also ratified a 12-member electoral committee and appeals committee drawn from 6 geopolitical zones to be inaugurated on the 25th of March in Abuja. On financial governance, Congress approved Ernst & Young as independent auditor for the 4-year term, following a competitive selection process involving 7 firms. Galatasaray and Nigeria striker Victor Osimhen is reportedly planning to purchase Istanbulspor, one of Turkey's historically established football clubs, in a move that signals the Nigerian forward's ambitions well beyond the pitch. According to a report by AfricFood, Osimhen's goal is not simply club ownership. 26-year-old wants to establish what has been described as a football bridge between Nigeria and Turkey. Reports indicated a Nigerian investor was set to acquire the club. However, Istanbulspor's president denied reports of a takeover by Victor Osimhen linked with Galatasaray or other parties, contradicting social media rumors of a purchase. The club was previously sold in 2006 for $3,250,000. The current market value of the squad is estimated to be in the single-digit millions in euros, with a recent estimated gross salary spend of around $6 million for 2023-2024 season. And South Africa's Pitso Mosimane Youth Football PMYF is a rapidly growing South African development initiative for 6 to 15 years old, led by coach Pitso Mosimane and Moira Tlhagale, employing over 90 coaches. The project operates on a commercial and development model, facing typical funding challenges and seeking corporate partners to support its goal of nurturing future professional talent. The project has expanded from Johannesburg townships, Tembisa, Alexandra, and Soweto into areas like Boksburg, Midrand, and North Riding, often relying on registration fees for programs. Mosimane, whose next coaching target is to work with a national team, also says their involvement with the TVET colleges will see them engage on the academic side of the sports programs.
We will be helping them with programs, because as much as we know that all the other universities have got sports courses, sports management, sports science, in generic part. So there is one TVET college, North Hill or North Link in the Cape Town, that has a sports academic program in it, and why not have it in all other TVETs?
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figede Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 4:37 Central African time. Thank you to our Business of Sports desk as well as our Markets desk bringing us the latest market indicators. We continue focusing on the aftermath and the results of the Iranian war. The escalating tensions that are involving Iran as well are resulting in a surge in global oil prices, and these are expected to send shockwaves through the global economy, with small businesses likely to feel the impact first. Hiten Keshav is CEO of Unconventional CA, a startup and SME advocacy organization, cautions that SMEs as well as startups should brace themselves for heightened volatility as well as rising costs in the coming months. He also notes that many small businesses already face challenges with cash flow management, and when inflationary pressures and supply constraints are added to the mix, inadequate planning can quickly lead to operational disruption. He joins us to discuss this further. A very good afternoon to you, Hiten Keshav. Welcome to Africa in Business.
having me, and good afternoon to you and your viewers.
So, how are hidden South African SMEs likely to feel the impact of rising global prices? And I guess this is not just South African SMEs, but SMEs across the African continent.
Look, I think the first thing that all SMEs need to be aware of is when oil generally rises, what's essentially going to happen. The biggest thing is inflation is going to take a rise, and rising oil means higher costs, essentially, whether it's fuel, whether it's transport, input costs from an import to export perspective, means that you now have to start managing your cash flow. The impact isn't immediate from a business perspective. What you'll often see is there's a delay. It'll take about 3 months or so for it to come into effect. But the nuts and bolts of it is essentially that you're going to have higher costs, and that means that you're going to have to start managing cash flow and the critical elements around pricing, both on a supplier side and a customer side, much more effectively and quicker.
And how should SMEs adjust their operational or procurement strategies in order for them to stay resilient, even in the midst of the rising energy and transport costs that you've been discussing?
So I think in light of that, from a procurement perspective, because cash flow is often king in an SMME ecosystem, it's important for SMMEs to have the conversation early upfront with their suppliers on how pricing is going to impact their costs, and then at the same time carry that forward with their customers and have that conversation earlier rather than later on that end. And then in that element, start planning for payment plans to happen between your suppliers and your customers, so that your customers you try and get them to pay you earlier, and you delay that payment to your suppliers, so that the cash inflow and outflow offsets each other in a way that you have more cash available before leaves the outer room, for a better word, on that end. That's the main thing that they have to look at. And from a pricing negotiation perspective, start to understand where your margins are that you make from each product, or so, well, more products that you're going to be selling, and whether you have to now consider alternative mechanisms that are more cost effective when it comes to be making your business leaner.
Cash flow. That's always a huge struggle for many SMEs. What are the strategies that you'd recommend in order to mitigate that financial strain that's caused by these global shocks?
Look, like I mentioned earlier, the easiest way to mitigate this is to start having earlier conversations with all your stakeholders. The other aspect is all SMMEs start to always keep yourself a buffer, a 3 to 6 month buffer in the closet, so that when unexpected surprises such as this come up, you always have that room, so that it allows for operations to continue, and you can then call into that buffer and that is rescue kit to allow for your business to continue in the event that you aren't able to succeed on the negotiation side between your suppliers and your customers on that end. The real essence around it is you want to delay payments with rising costs, but you also want to tighten up your payment terms with your customers so that you get paid upfront. It may require maybe some early settlement discount negotiations that take place, and you can also then push that through asking for higher volumes and quantities. So by giving discounts doesn't mean that you're taking a knock only on your end, but if you request higher volumes by providing a discounts, it's a give and take situation. So this is where critical thinking from a negotiations perspective we see in the work we do with entrepreneurs, especially on the personal development side at UCA, helps entrepreneurs to then navigate and break through circumstances that they are often faced with, that are in their control, that they don't often realize.
So I want us to talk a bit about UCA and the kind of support that you offer SMEs.
Yeah, so we're a startup and advisory firm that focuses on the growth and development of entrepreneurs and startups. So we partner up with corporates predominantly on the BE side to help design and develop entrepreneur development programs that help build and scale SMEs to becoming sustainable. What makes us different is two things. We track the journey of an entrepreneur from start to finish through a monitoring implementation framework called Ember 360 that helps navigate where the strengths are, where the areas of development are for an entrepreneur, and measures that impact from start to finish. And then the second element is we incorporated neuroscience into our methodology when working with entrepreneurs, because the engine room behind every business is an entrepreneur that runs it. And if that entrepreneur has limiting beliefs and has limitations from a psychology perspective, that knock-on effect takes place in the business. So they can have the greatest business, they can have a sound business model, but you'll often find them hitting a ceiling all the time. And so helping them through neuroscience frameworks helps us get them through that breakthrough journey and aha moment to get through that next level of growth. And you see that growth then taking place where we support them either from a marketing perspective, financial management perspective, capital raising elements, market access. So there's a variety of ecosystem opportunities that we provide to our entrepreneurs besides just development work.
And on that note, the financial instruments that are available, to SMEs, whether it's government support or private sector resources, what are they? The ones that SMEs can actually leverage in order to measure, or rather to weather this period?
Look, I think from a financial perspective, there are some grants that every SMME can apply for. However, I will make it's important to note that grants do take a long time to come through from the government system itself, be it the DTI, the NEF or NYDA if you're a youth-owned entrepreneur. So I wouldn't really bank on having grants as a way to get out of the current spectrum. There isn't really any relief system like how they had back in COVID that the government has put out specifically for the rising costs. This is a business as usual matter that entrepreneurs have to deal with. I would suggest for many entrepreneurs and startups out there, start to have discussions with your bank as a starting point to increase potential overdraft facilities that you can then manage. Because that will be your easiest mechanism for short-term guaranteed cash flow to help alleviate any pressure that you may need in the foreseeable near term itself. From a long-term perspective, have a look at whether you want to potentially have investors in, or alternatively look at capital funding that is either purchase order based, debtors book financed, because that is lean and immediately available, and it's backed by guaranteed delivery of work that you have in the pipeline already.
When is a good time, Hiten, for SMEs to start approaching their suppliers?
Now, immediately, start right now. If you haven't already started the conversation, start the conversations now. You have to predict the worst case scenario at the moment. With Trump at the moment, it's like a seesaw, right? It goes up one day and it goes down one day. And we see that already in the stock markets and how that's taking an effect on the JSE itself. Now, with that volatility taking such a big impact on the corporate side, the same, it's just going to filter down through to the SMME. So rather take action immediately than delay it for later and assume scenarios that may not actually play out.
Hiten Keshaf, thank you for some really sage advice. Don't wait until the end. Preempt what the worst case scenario would be. He is CEO of UCA, that is Unconventional CA, a startup and SME advocacy organization.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect.
As Channel Africa gears up to host the very first ever Africa Matters Summit on Wednesday, with this year's theme being climate change, financing Africa's recovery, the United Nations Weather Agency is warning that the planet's climate is more out of balance than ever before. The World Meteorological Organization has released its State of the Global Climate 2025 report, revealing record-breaking greenhouse gas levels, ocean heat and glacier melt. Channel Africa's Lebohang Mabange has more.
The WMO's annual report, produced in collaboration with meteorological agencies, climate research institutions and UN partners, gives a stark picture of the climate crisis. Nandita Surendran, chief of the WMO Strategic Communication Office, explains.
The State of Climate report is our annual check-in a sense, on the state of the global climate, key climate indicators and their impacts. This comprehensive report is produced by WMO in collaboration with national meteorological and hydrological services agencies, international data centers, climate research institutions, and of course, UN partners.
The report shows that 2025 was among the hottest years ever recorded, with the past decade marking the hottest 11 years in history. Greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide reached record levels in 2024, and concentrations continue to rise. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, warned about the implications.
The state of the global climate is in a state of emergency. Planet Earth is being pushed beyond its limits. Every key climate indicator is flashing red. That is the clear message of the latest report from the World Meteorological Organization. The report confirms that the Earth's energy imbalance, the gap between heat absorbed and heat released, is the highest on record. In other words, our planet is trapping heat faster than it can shed it. Greenhouse gases concentrations are higher than at any point in hundreds of thousands of years.
WMO's Deputy Executive Secretary Cole Barrett highlighted the rising temperatures and the long-term impact on land and oceans.
This report confirms that 2025 was the second or third hottest year on record, depending on the data set used. It was about 1.43 degrees C above the 1850 to 1900 baseline. Between 2015 and 2025, we experienced the hottest 11 years on record. In 2025, our glaciers continued to retreat and ice continued to melt. The warming ocean and melting land-based ice are driving the long-term rise in global mean sea level rise.
Barrett says these findings underscore the need for early warnings and life-saving forecasts to help vulnerable communities adapt.
These findings inspire us to work harder to get life-saving forecasts and early warnings into the hands of those who can protect lives and livelihoods, identifying trends that can inform planning and decision-making. And this is why we monitor the state of the climate.
The WMO warns that the Earth's energy imbalance caused by rising greenhouse gases is accelerating planetary warming, with oceans absorbing the majority of excess heat. Scientists caution that the consequences for human populations, especially those living on low-lying coasts or dependent on marine resources, could be severe if action is not urgently stepped up. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
So what does Vue d'Afrique have in store for us this afternoon? They are coming up in about 9 minutes' time. And standing by is the beautiful Joël. What do you have in store for us today?
Merci Thami, bonjour à tous les auditeurs. Sur Vue d'Afrique tout à l'heure, il sera question du Mali. Un journaliste a été condamné à 2 ans de prison ferme pour offense, pour atteinte au crédit de l'État et aussi pour offense à un chef d'État étranger. Nous en parlerons avec notre correspondant dans la région. Nous parlerons également de l'Organisation météorologique mondiale qui alerte sur le chaos climatique. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique et bien plusieurs autres sujets. Merci de rester connectés. Merci Thami.
Merci beaucoup. C'est Joël coming up at the top of the hour.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
So going into our market update today, let's take a look at the challenges that South African small, medium enterprises as well as entrepreneurs are facing. We'll also discuss how they can overcome these challenges in order to build successful businesses. Joining us on the show today to unpack these challenges is Michael Hill, who is the head region for business banking in the Western Cape at Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. A very good afternoon, sir. Good to have you with us on African Business.
Hi, good afternoon, Thami. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to all your listeners.
So you as Standard Bank have highlighted the everyday mistakes that South African SMEs and entrepreneurs are making. What is it that prompted this move?
Thami, if you really look at it, and this is following the GEM report, and maybe just to synthesize the GEM report, it's really the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor report, which really highlights data across entrepreneurship. And if we look at a few causes and trends in entrepreneurs currently, and this is something facilitated by the World Bank as well. We're really finding that early stage entrepreneurial activity remains robust. In the report, it identifies a persistent structural challenge where many ventures do not survive long enough to really become established firms. And if you look at the report, the transition from that startup phase or SME phase to established business is really constrained by structural conditions, particularly entrepreneurial education, and hence us prompting the conversation around what are key themes and key trends where entrepreneurs might overlook or startups might overlook in terms of making them established businesses. That is really the key prompt around us going to market and providing some form of education, even it is from an industry perspective, from a sector perspective, but predominantly focus at that SME level and trying to provide tips and pointers around, how can startups grow into established firms, and even existing SMEs really remain within the business and kind of increase and grow and scale that business and remain sustainable. Ultimately, the SMEs remain the backbone of our economy, and we really have seen excellent businesses evolve from the likes of garages or street vendors and have become really successful.
You mentioned the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor report, and one of the things that it points out is a fear of failure as being one of the key barriers to entrepreneurship. You mentioned education as well. Could you highlight as well some of the other key outtakes that emerged to the surface?
Thami, if you really look at it, 40% in individuals have kind of said, look, fear of failure is a key component in not wanting to start a business. But if you really look into that report and you go into the detail, individuals who previously had or owned businesses or small startups are likely to start again. The education component really comes around, and we're not talking about formalized education necessarily, but it's around those key pointers. And just by way of an example, something that we really see is, entrepreneurs that are still cash heavy in informal markets. A lot of them don't necessarily understand the inherent risks in those markets around carrying cash on a physical premises and end up, for example, cash goes missing, and then it becomes a liquidity concern around that. So it's just about providing those prompts, and the fear of failure doesn't necessarily drive the starting. Like I mentioned earlier and initially, we're really seeing a record number of startups, not just globally, but from an African and South African context as well. So, and if you boil that down even further, we're seeing that within our youth markets, we're seeing a similar trend where there's really a very strong need and aspiration around starting those businesses. So very happy to see the robust levels of increasing entrepreneurship, and it's really coming down and boiling down to how do we simplify and make it easier for these SMEs, more particularly startups, to go into that mature business phase.
You touched on liquidity concerns, and I want to flesh that out a little bit in the 2 minutes that we have. How are you, as Standard Bank, supporting entrepreneurs as far as their cash flow management is concerned? Because that still remains a very critical issue for them. And what are the practical steps that entrepreneurs can take when, separating their personal and their business finances? Because that is, in and of itself, a discipline.
That is so critical. I mean, cash flow management, it all goes about planning. If you really are driven from an entrepreneurship perspective, it's really critical to plan your inflows and outflows carefully. You need to manage that cash that you have, and cash is king, not in the essence of physical cash, but that cash flow component. Businesses that plan well in advance and monitor their rands and cents and the cash flow They plan now and they survive later. In cash flow management as well, we spoke about the physical cash component and really managing the inherent risks of carrying cash. And there are various ways around curbing that. Merchant devices, for example, at Standard Bank, we've got Simply Blue, where it's got an integrated stock mechanism where you can track stock inflow, outflow, and really get a report around what your cash is doing within your business. Secondly, in terms of when there is a crunch, it's so important to have a good relationship with your bank, and to remain active and actively engaged with your bank and have sound account conduct. We've got various products that are really tailored to those needs. For example, we have a BizFlex offering which really kind of minimizes the gap on those liquidity crunches and the times of need, where you marry the revenue trend and your repayment is in line as a percentage of a revenue trend, not having a fixed repayment necessarily, but really looking at the life cycle and the cash flow of the business and giving that flexible repayment terms on your business.
That sounds like a really useful feature, Mr. Hill. We'll have to leave our conversation there for today, but thank you so much for taking us through that. Certainly a lot of support that's being offered as far as the tools that will help you navigate your SME journey. That's Mr. Michael Hill, Head of Region for Business Banking in the Western Cape at Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Brings us to exactly 5 p.m. Central African time. That's how we bow out as Africa in Business, making way for Vodafrique. Restez connectés.